Hello Internet and welcome to Game Theory, the show that's been ruining your childhood since day one. I'm your guest host for today, Ollie, and this is my little autism Tiff. Now, I bet you're all wondering where Tom went, and don't worry your little heads too much, because he's still alive. Probably. He's just on a family vacation, and the team decided that I'll fill in for him today. Now, over the course of Game Theory, a lot of topics were covered and discussed. But something that I personally noticed game theory seemed to lack was any theories revolving around America's history, specifically before the 20th century. Yes, my friends, today's theory required us to deep dive into America during the mid-19th century, or more well known as during the Civil War. I bet you're all saying, you can't just pull a random theory out your ass crack because you want to talk about the Civil War. And to that I say, oh you poor unfortunate souls. The Antebellum Project is an ARG anonymously created that a fan helped draw our attention to on our subreddit, r/game theory. And wouldn't you know it, it's about the Civil War. More specifically, child soldiers in Civil War. The Antebellum is a website created to share the stories of child soldiers and honor their deaths, according to their About Us page. And reading the child soldier section, a couple of phrases seem to stand out. They were sent out to battlefields with a gun and a patriotic spirit strong enough to make George Washington himself cry. And with their fighting spirit strong enough to make a grown man sob, they were unstoppable. It was a win-win, except for the children that had died. Except for the children that died, huh? What an odd thing to add. If you haven't caught on already, this website is clearly military propaganda, targeted specifically at children used in war. And not just any war, but the Civil War. Not only does it directly state Civil War soldiers, but the word antebellum directly translated means before the war, coming from the Latin phrase antebellum. This word became widely associated with the Civil War after the conflict was over, and is now used to call the time period of the American Civil War, which started in 1861 due to reasons hopefully everyone knows. The Union, or the North, and the Confederates, the South, got into major disagreements when it came to owning and using slaves, the Union standing firmly against it, while the Confederates trying to reason that they need slaves for their economy. Unable to settle with just words, it escalated to a full-fledged war, which is now known as the American Civil War. This whole website is a huge romanticization and glorification of the usage of child soldiers during the Civil War, making the whole entire thing just off-putting at best. Not to mention, the enlistment of underage kids were made illegal by Abraham Lincoln in 1862, a year into the Civil War, so glorifying what was technically considered illegal and making a whole website off of it is questionable. Plus, the only reason why government officials turned a blind eye to using teenagers and even straight-up children was due to the number of casualties, leading to recruiting officers looking the other way when underage boys tried to enlist. Many of the younger ones would sign up as drummers. Close, but not exactly. It looked more like this. They would use these type of drums and act as messengers, relaying officers' commands. I mean, they would also do drummer things as well, like signaling reveilles, roll call, company drills, and taps. Older boys would participate in the conflict as fully fledged soldiers, fighting on the battlefield with their lives on the line. Because their lives were on the line. And not only their lives, but the lives of their family, their peer, their people. Now, as intriguing as all of this is, the Contact Us page was what really caught our attention. Now, we jumped into this ARG without much background knowledge, except for the fact that it was an ARG about the Civil War. If our fan didn't tell us that, this website would have been easy to overlook, due to how generic everything seemed. Just another psychotic military propaganda that seems to be okay with using underage kids as weapons. Now, like any good ARG solver, we put our email and sent a message, a question about how and why this website was created. The response didn't only catch us off guard, but pleasantly surprised us. A woman named Sarah Jung sent us an email regarding the question, but not through their official email account, which was stated in the Contact Us page, but through what can be assumed as their personal email. Now let's look at the actual email itself. At first sight, it looks like a jumble of words, but it's actually a seizure cipher, and it's clearly an URL. By formatting like a URL and putting it in the search bar, we are met with an error screen. Obviously, we press the Learn More button to go to a different site, and what the fuck? So, is that it? Is the URL broken? Does the ARG just end like this? Calm down, my lovely audience, because like the good ARG solvers we are, we press every nook and cranny of this webpage, and wouldn't you know it, by pressing the back in the sentence, we are sent to a tab with a single picture. Now, I bet you're asking, oh, Ollie, but isn't this just a black screen? But with a little magic and a ton of photoshopping, you can make out a child in uniform with a badly injured arm, and in the corner there's a single phrase. They were so young. Now, even a dummy can piece this one together. That is clearly a child soldier injured after fighting on the battlefield, and it won't be too far-fetched to say that this child soldier is from the Civil War. Not only given the fact that this whole entire ARG is based around the Civil War, but also from the details on the uniform that can be made out, given the simple oversized button jacket and the plain trousers. Many soldiers, especially kids, couldn't afford or get a proper uniform and therefore had to use what they had at home to wear, making the designs a lot more simplistic compared to the Revolutionary War or World War I. Now, looking at child soldiers from the Civil War, one particular kid caught my attention, going by the name William Black. Thank you, Tiff. Edward Black is the youngest soldier to ever get enlisted, serving since he was 8, while William Black was the youngest soldier to ever get injured on the battlefield, his left hand and arm shattered by an exploding shell at the age of 12. Left hand and arm, you don't say. Well, it seems like we have a name for the kid in the picture, William Black. Okay, so where do we go from here, because it seems like another dead end. But by flipping the image upside down and zooming into this corner, wouldn't you know it, there's another mix of letters. Another seizure cipher. By decoding it, we're met with the words, go back. So we go back to the error screen. Now what? Well, if you're paying attention, then you would notice that there is another back. And it leads to a website for a kindergarten military boot camp. After some digging around, it turns out that this kindergarten boot camp is sponsored by the Antebellum. We also found the login page and decided to put in the only name that we knew, Sarah Jung. And for the password, we put in the seizure cipher from the email unsolved, and to our surprise, it works. We're greeted with a page no longer available screen and an option to go back to the home page, but when we pressed the button, the whole entire computer just crashed. Obviously, it's not real, so we did what any theorist would do. We scanned the QR code, and we found ourselves transported to a YouTube page belonging to, wouldn't you know it, Sarah Jung. There are 3 videos uploaded by her, Interview Log 01, Interview Log 04, and whatever that means. Okay, so let's start off with the first upload, Interview Log 01. The screen is just a view of some hallway with the door slightly ajar, and in the background you can hear a woman speaking. Listening to the audio, we can piece together the Antebellum is a government-funded company, clearly trying to make child soldiers and their experiences positive, romanticizing and glorifying what they went through in the name of patriotism. Sarah Jung, one of the executives, no longer agreed with the ideologies and decided to resign, but didn't leave without giving them a hard time, trying to expose the company online through different means. And from the looks of it, it seems like a success. I mean, we're sitting right here watching her videos. The second uploaded video is another interview log, but this time is labeled as Interview Log 04. I wonder what happened to 02 and 03. The interview was, I'm assuming, Sarah Jung, interrupting the interviewer by asking if they knew who John Clem was. The interviewer kept brushing past interruptions with simple, no I do not, and it is not relevant. Now, John Clem, nicknamed John Shahol, after shooting a Confederate colonel at the Battle of Shahol in 1862, is one of the most well-known child soldiers. Starting off as a drummer boy after running away from his home to join the Michigan Regiment, he earned his fame when he put his drum down and picked up a rifle, killing a Confederate soldier when he was just 11 years old. He was the youngest soldier in American history to be sergeant, and fought in the war until he got captured and taken prisoner by the Confederate soldiers in 1863. While he was exchanged later, during a prisoner exchange, he was used by the Confederates due to his age and fame for propaganda purposes to show how the Unions were sending their babies out to fight them. John Clem became a part of the Army of Cumberland, participating in many battles and serving as a mounted orderly, and then discharged in 1864. After a while, Sarah can be heard yelling, demanding the interviewer and the antebellum to realize how harmful their program is, to look and learn from the past. They weren't heroes. They were victims. Children. More heated arguing can be heard, Sarah yelling and spewing insults, the interviewer desperately trying to calm her down, which was then cut off by audible panic from him, followed by a scream and 5 gunshots. The video then shifts to a newspaper headline. Young man in his late 30s found dead in abandoned warehouse, shot in the chest 5 different times. Looks like Sarah isn't just an activist, but also a murderer. The last video is an extremely glitchy ad for the kindergarten military boot camp we saw earlier. Something clearly going wrong because barely anything is comprehensible. But when you slow it down, you can make out a pretty handful of different things. First things first, there are a lot of pictures of child soldiers littered throughout the whole entire video, all looking extremely young. An old map of Gettysburg can even be found made out in between the frames. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with the Battle of Gettysburg, but just in case you're not, I'll give you a brief summary. The Gettysburg Battle happened in 1863, and is widely known to have the largest number of casualties in the entire war, and is commonly described as a turning point for the Union, the end of the Civil War following 2 years after it, with the Union securing their victory and bringing an end to slavery in 1865. Phrases like, they had no idea what they were getting into. So many casualties. For what? They're trying to do it again. Are littered all over, fading into the background. Trying to do it again, huh? Not only that, but by opening the caption, we can see messages in Morse code. By decoding all of it, we are met with a huge rant, clearly written by Sarah Jung about the whole concept of child soldiers, the antebellum's efforts in glorifying it. This gives us a huge chunk of the story, connecting a lot of dots thrown out. Children in war. What a disgusting and terrifying thing. Yet you try to romanticize it? Glorify their pain and suffering for what? In the name of patriotism? Why is the government even trying to recruit the little ones once more? All the children dead, they could have grown to be amazing people, start families, become fathers, mothers. Yet they could even make it to their 20s. Running away from their homes to seek thrill and adventure. Such young souls like them, what could they possibly know? But you knew. The recruiters knew. Sending these kids to their graves with a sugar coat, how could they? Turning a blind eye to fill recruitment quotas, how can they live with themselves? Youngest at 8, how horrifying. Starving, screaming in agony, I can still hear their voice echoing through the night. 20% was underage, Lied to them once, you lied to them twice? How? Military boot camp? Bullshit. Are you really trying to create more child soldiers? How many more traumatized kids do we need? Watching their towns fall apart, burned to the ground, is that not enough? Another generation? God damn. But that answers our previous question. The company is trying to recruit child soldiers by implementing military boot camps for kids, obviously trying to train them at an earlier age. And all of this is supported by the government. By reverse searching the newspaper that we saw in Interview Log 04, we are met with a website called Army Dreamers 051. At first, it seems like a poke fun at the Area 51 thing, but with more research, we found out that there's a song called Army Dreamers, and by going to the timestamp, 51 seconds, we are met with the lyrics. Oh, what could he do? Should have been a father, but he never even made it to his 20s. Ouch, that one hit hard. The whole song is about soldiers dying at war, sang from the perspective of a mother. While the song seemed to be talking about the British, given it starts with the BFPO, the British Forces Postal Office, who brings home dead bodies, it can be applied to this scenario as well, talking about how a romanticized version of the army, hence the Army Dreamer, led to the son getting killed in battle. The background vocals criticizing his choice in the chorus should have been a father, like that was the better choice. But the mother clearly has pride in her son, calling him her little army boy and her hero, saying he's adorned with purple flowers. While white symbolized grievance, purple symbolized pride and success. Extremely melancholy, isn't it? Website Army Dreamers 051 gives more information on the news story, telling us that the culprit was never caught, which not only means that Sarah is still out there, but that the interview logs never got into the hands of the police or the antebellum, because if they did, they would have been able to identify her by now. Or the antebellum and the government is purposefully hiding information from the public. At the very bottom, there's a set of coordinates. 38 degrees, 49 minutes north, negative 77 degrees, 31 minutes west, which inputted take us to where the first battle of Bull Run happened near the city of Manassas. It was fought in July 1861. It was actually the first major battle of the American Civil War, where the Confederates actually won, but it seemed like it did more harm to victors than the defeated. Replacing the last 8 numbers of the URL with the coordinates, we are met with a video labeled One Last Goodbye. In the video, Sarah's voice can be heard once more, but this time is a lot more hectic, out of breath, as if she was running away for a prolonged amount of time. She claims that she doesn't have much time and the government is out to get her, the video ending abruptly afterwards. This marks the end of the ARG. And yes, it is still ongoing, so please remember the 5 rules as ARG solvers. So far, from what we gathered, we pieced together the Antebellum is a government-funded group aiming to create more soldiers and train them at a younger age through a military boot camp program. Why? Because there has been a huge decrease of military enlistment in the past couple of decades, and that is clearly instilling concern and worry in the government, enough to feel like they have to pull some strings backstage to push the numbers back up. And who's best to target if not little kids trying to shape their future goals and aspirations? By reinforcing the ideologies that serving in the military is great and a huge honor, like how they did in the 20th century, they're hoping the kids will grow up to serve the country. But clearly more is going on behind the curtains, if it was enough to drive Sarah Jung insane and murder an employee of the Antebellum, causing her to be haunted by the FBI. I just can't wait for what the ARG has to reveal next. But until then, remember, loyal theorists, it's just a theory, a game theory. Thanks for watching.